happy Friday. I hope everyone is doing fantastic. I'm really excited for our next guest. Is somebody who I've been following on social media for quite some time, somebody who just gets it, does it right, understands what it means to be in recovery. And he's had a lot of great things happen for him over the last couple of months. And so with that, I'd like to introduce my next guest, Austin Cooper, who is the founder of Sober Revolution. Welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you. And I really appreciate you having me on this show. You're doing a lot for the community and just glad to be here.
Excellent. Austin, walk me through your family, your upbringing. You're from Ohio, I believe. You now live in Florida, the Sunshine State, but you and I were just talking about the weather and the implications that it has even on the modern technology with Wi-Fi and microphones and whatnot. Walk me through who Austin Cooper is.
Sure. As you mentioned, I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. And I know this might jump right into it, but I had a good upbringing, very loving family. I feel very blessed to have that. I know not everybody does. And, I'm very blessed that I had that. One of the things that, I always mention in my story is that, sometimes that can be something that leads to, drug use and alcohol abuse. And for me, in a way, it kind of did in that, my family, I was very close to them growing up, and I was their handsome young man, and I could do no wrong and just perfect in every way. But come to find out, when I started going to school, I'd get made fun of and picked on and things like that, and it was just night and day between what I was seeing at home compared to what I was experiencing by the outside world. And I remember as soon as that happened, when I first started getting picked on a little bit, my entire self-image just crumbled right there. I didn't understand, why my family was saying one thing, but then everybody else seemed to be saying another thing. And so I think for me, that just crushed my self-care and self-love. And, that later on in my life seemed to play into me finding alcohol and it bringing me out of my comfort zone and made me be able to talk to people and be confident and have that self-confidence that I had lost. So, I can't fault that at my parents at all. They did such a great job raising me. But I just didn't know how to deal with the outside world, and, my confidence and self-esteem being at an ultimate low, ultimately led to me finding alcohol and falling in love with it the minute that I tried it. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much my background, is going to, good schools growing up and having a loving family, but really my self-esteem issues are what got me.
It's funny because I often share with, those that know me know that I'm, vertically challenged. And from a very, young age, I remember just during the summer, asking, please don't let me be the shortest kid in school, because I would get made fun of all the time about my height. And, later on in life, those were words, anybody that would pick on me because of my height, that was like fighting words. Whereas most people would have kind of let it go. For me, it was almost like an instigation to engage me at a level, and then you compound the impact of drugs and alcohol. It was a hurricane. So I understand that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk to me a little bit about your life today. How bad your life in addiction was, your epiphany. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, life today, I can't complain about too many things, other than this whole coronavirus stuff that we're all going through right now, and the implications that it has on each of our lives. But, today I am a confident person and very self-aware. And, You know, I'm with the love of my life. And so I feel very blessed to have all those things in my life. It's a complete 180 from what it was, you know, years and years ago. Um, as we mentioned earlier, you know, I fell in love with alcohol the moment I felt that first buzz. It was just the greatest. It was the elixir to all of my problems. At least that's the way I felt. But everything else in my life, you know, kind of fell by the wayside, and my priorities were just all out of whack. My priority was to get drunk and party and meet new people and, you know, be confident because of the alcohol. And that eventually led to drugs and experimenting with all sorts of drugs and actions. And, you know, it ultimately led to me dropping out of college and, you know, just accruing student loan debt without anything to show for it. Eventually after that, I ended up having to move back in with my parents. And that, you know, for me was a huge ego blow because I had been living, you know, by myself for so long, and going back to living with my parents in my mid 20s, for me, it just really, you know, killed me deep inside. And that's when things really went from, you know, just weekend drug use and weekend alcohol abuse to pretty much every day. It was, you know, I know you were talking with me earlier, man. It's like once that 5 o'clock time hits, it is off to the races. And, you know, even waking up and being drunk and going into work and the job that I had. But, you know, I just wasn't advancing anywhere in life. I wasn't advancing at my job. You know, I had a great opportunity coming into college, and I just blew it all away. And, you know, not having any money, you know, played a huge part in my depression and anxiety. I wouldn't be able to fall asleep at night without being, you know, completely drunk. I mean, really without passing out. And that right there was pretty much the lowest point in my life. I remember, you know, stealing some of my dad's medication. He actually had surgery to have cancer taken out. And he had leftover, you know, painkillers. And I just remember being in my room in the basement of my parents' house. I unlocked my door because I wasn't sure if I was going to wake up. And I just started, you know, blowing everything I could to the point of nodding out, waking up, you know, without breathing. And you know, I thought to myself, you know, this might be the end for me. The least I can do is unlock my door so that my parents can come find me if I don't wake up. So right there, that was by far the lowest point in my life. I remember, you know, what was really interesting about that time is I saw a friend who actually used to deal me some drugs, saw him on Facebook say, I'm going to rehab, you know, somewhere out west. And I was like, man, like I've never seen anybody be so vulnerable and say that, you know, they're going to rehab. I thought, you know,
On Facebook.
on Facebook, on social media, I was like, man, like before I thought, you know, wouldn't that be something to be embarrassed about or ashamed about? But he threw it all out there. And I remember following that, you know, I don't know how many days later, 60 days, something like that. He's like, I'm out of rehab and this is what I'm going to do with my life. And, you know, this is the changes I've experienced. And I literally saw him go from someone who was at a low point, like where I was at, to thriving in life and doing these incredible things and accomplishing these amazing goals, moving to the other side of the country. And I just thought, you know, that is truly incredible. He was so brave to talk about his story openly on social media. And not only that, but, you know, show us proof that a life away from drugs and alcohol can really give you some amazing things in life, you know, let alone restoring your relationships with your family, but finding a career and just doing these incredible things. And that planted a seed in my mind, you know, that ultimately helped me make the decision to get sober. Now, right away, you know, I wasn't like, all right, it's time for me to, you know, go get help. You know, I was still at that point where it's like, well, you know, maybe I will eventually, you know, maybe I'll just have enough of it and I'll decide to get help. maybe if I get, fired from this job, then I'll get help. Or maybe if, I'm offered an opportunity to go get help, maybe I'll take it, and it just months and months and months went by. And finally, I was actually at work one day and my boss is like, "Hey, you want to go to a meeting?" And I hadn't been to a meeting with him in a long time. So I was like, okay, I was kind of thrown off by it, but, he ended
Wow.
up taking me to this place where he said the meeting was at. And I remember the door opened and I saw the first thing I saw, and it was all within, a split second, literally. I saw my mom sitting on the other side of the door, and my life flashed before my eyes because one, I thought, well, did somebody in my family die and like they're gonna, all come together and tell me, or it's either that or this is an intervention. I had watched that show Intervention enough to kind of know what an intervention looked like. And within that split second, I told myself, if this is an intervention, I am going. Like, I can't, if I think about it too long, I'm going to talk myself out of it. If there's ever been an opportunity in my life to turn it around and start accomplishing goals, this is it, period. And opened the door all the way. I saw my mom, my dad, a couple aunts and uncles and cousins and my sister sitting there, and with, someone who turned out to be the interventionist. And I knew it was an intervention, and I knew, okay, I have to block everything out of my mind. It's game time. Let's go. I have to become stubborn to, go through whatever it was I was going to go through to be able to accomplish the types of things that my friend had accomplished. So earlier I mentioned he planted a seed. Well, that seed ultimately, led to my decision to go get help. So went to rehab, and, it was a few weeks in there, and, it wasn't the prettiest place or nicest place, but man, I was there to study. I was there to get it right. I never wanted to have to go back again. Ultimately I got fired from my job while I was there. But, I was so focused, finally, for once in my life, focused on myself and figuring out, how I can move forward from that point. And so it was almost like nothing else mattered but my recovery from that point on. So, that's a big part of my story, of course, right there. And really, the rest is history. It's just been getting organized from there and figuring out what my goals in life are. And, a lot of what my goals have been to, be able to share my story to help other people. And that's what led to Sober Evolution back in 2016. And everything I've been able to accomplish and do since.
Talk to me a little bit about Silver Revolution. Where are you at with it right now? What was the genesis of that movement that you said, hey, I think it's time for me to kind of extend a hand to those who need it? And you're doing it at a really high level. How would you describe where you were? Was this initially right after you got out of treatment, you decided to start this, and now it's 7 years since, and it's where it's at?
So after I got out of treatment, I wanted to be like my one friend who, had been so open, and I saw so much good feedback. And so I started posting on Facebook pretty much, similar stuff. And, I started focusing on my, physical health and nutritional health and things like that. And, wanted to show the average person and, friends or whoever was following me on Facebook at the time that, this is a good thing and this is possible. Now, it didn't come until a few years later. So I got sober back in 2013. But one of the, things I found really helped me out was associating with, like-minded people. So people either who were in recovery or were building their lives or both. And so I finally got on Instagram and started following some other pages. I think, I don't know if Doing It Sober, but Daniela was one of the first follows. And I think like Sober Nation and a couple other, big accounts that I just thought, it was so cool that, they're posting their stories and, they're being vulnerable and they're able to reach a wide audience. And, the feedback that they get from people is pretty amazing. And so, I wanted to kind of create something similar to where I could tell my story and and hopefully be able to help at least one person. And, I thought, well, Instagram seems like a pretty cool way because I can take what I'm learning now and post it in, just this little image and maybe a quote or a meme or, whatever.
Yep.
And then be able to use that as kind of a blog by, telling my story in the comments. And so, I started doing that. And like, right around that same time, I was reading all these personal development books, like, Think and Grow Rich and stuff like that, even though has nothing to do with, recovery. It has to do with life building. And what I found amazing too was, from what I had learned early on in my recovery from going to meetings, is that the principles of, recovery are the exact same as, the principles of, say, business or sports or whatever it is. It's really a universal language. And I just thought that was so cool. So I'm like, all right, let's, figure out some of these quotes that kind of help me change, the course of my life or my thinking and my mindset. Let's put it on Instagram. And, I just went with it. I really didn't think anything would come of it. But again, if I can help one person, that's, a lifelong goal. So yeah, just started doing it, man. And everybody that started following me was just like, man, this is great. Like, I never thought of, life this way, but the way you explain it, or the way you explain this quote, I mean, that's amazing. And the best thing I ever see, and I always tell people this, is when people say, I needed to see this right now. Whatever they're going through, they needed to see that right now. And I got to be a part of that. I mean, that's incredible. And they get to, repost that stuff and help other people. And it just, spreads like wildfire. So, that's when it all started. And, I later that year in 2016, I'm like, I've never started a business, an actual, LLC or anything like that, but it'd be pretty cool to, try that out, at least, to figure out how to do it, so that later in life, if I decide to start up, a big business, anything like that, I might have, some sort of reference to go back to. And I'm like,
So great.
what can I, what kind of business could I do? And so I created a t-shirt business early on. I'm like, man, that's cool that people get to wear, something that says sober right on the front or something like that. It's
like a badge of honor.
Exactly. And, before then, I would never have thought of it that way. I think the complete opposite about it. But there's just something about someone being vulnerable, in public, in that way, that I just find fascinating. And so I started wearing my own shirts, and I'm like, man, like, this is empowering. This is great. People will come up to me and be like, hey, what's your shirt mean? Why are you wearing that? And I get to explain things, and they'll get to talk back to me and be like, I have a family member who's struggling, or maybe that person themselves is struggling. Now we've opened up a conversation, or just some sort of inspiration for them to maybe get help and start their own recovery. So yeah, that was just, a fun project early on. And, it's led to some awesome opportunities, Sober Evolution. And, I'm just grateful for it, and everybody that, is a part of it, and who follows. And what's awesome is I've created the best relationships and friendships in my life because of it.
Yeah. It's whenever, now when you're fully immersed, because in my opinion, there's two things, right? There is the period where you stop drinking, and then there's the period and the life that you live when you're in recovery. Two completely different things, right? And so now that I'm in recovery, I still have some of my friends that will invite me over for dinner, and I know they drink, and they're like, they're on edge, and they don't want to open up a bottle of wine, or they don't want to have a beer in front of me. And I just, hey, time out here. I didn't just get out of treatment. I've been, sober and living in recovery for a number of days now, because it's all I got is days. And by that, I mean compounded days. And I'm fortunate to really categorize my recovery now in the number of days that I have versus the number of years that I had. I think that's critical. Do you get that sometimes with your friends? Maybe not at 7 years, but did you ever have, or maybe I should ask you this, does your fiance drink? And how do you manage that?
Well, no, she doesn't. What's interesting is she started following me on social media years ago, and she's been in recovery for almost as long as I have.
Great.
We just connected through social media. She moved to Florida. I moved to Florida. We met up, kind of just I thought it was just to, meet up for, business, or maybe I can consult and help her build, the company's social media platform, something like that. But I was just like right away, it was love at first sight. But so, really in my daily life these days, I don't have many people in my life who drink. I mean, I moved away from Ohio. I moved to Florida back, it was 4 years ago. So yeah, 2016. And, it's not that I have a problem, with that. It's just, the people I associate with mostly are, in recovery. Now, being around alcohol, stuff like that doesn't bother me at all.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, early in my recovery, I'd go to, might be a Thanksgiving or, a big family celebration of sorts. I think, there were graduations, and my cousins are like, hey, congrats on, being sober and all of that. And then they crack open a beer and chug it. And, it's like, whatever, man,
Yeah.
it just, I mean, I know very early on, I wanted to avoid being around it, just because it was, something that I was just coming off of.
Mm-hmm.
So I was smart about that.
Mm-hmm.
But, as I learned, from my own experience, that I was accomplishing so much more in my recovery than I had, the 10 years prior, when I was drinking and using. And so, I made a pact with myself, with this non-negotiable, basically, and I'd revert back to the non-negotiable of never touching alcohol or drugs again every time I would feel tempted. And so I think that, eventually just became a habit to where I could go back to, that mental picture of, me signing a piece of paper saying that's just a non-negotiable, period. And it just became a habit, and then just a way of life. And so, just getting back immersed into regular society, for me, it was gradual, but, ultimately, it just doesn't bother me at all anymore.
Great points. I'm aligned to those same feelings for sure. The word that we've shared here on this Zoom call podcast has been recovery. And for the longest time, I've shared publicly that recovery is more than just putting a plug in the jug and or putting the drugs down, right? We are, all of us, I don't care what stage of life you're in, we're all recovering from something. And so when you look at the platform and what we're trying to do as an organization is really like broaden that category. And I've had many people who are not like us, recovering addicts, tell me that they gravitate more towards somebody that is recovering in alcohol because of the abyss, because of the pain, because of the strength that it took to overcome that pain, not only overcome it and get back to normal, but now exceed what you ever imagined, right? Get back to living a life that you never would have imagined. How do you feel about that word recovery?
Yeah, I mean, recovery for me is, every aspect of life, because it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just alcohol that was, the issue for me. It was also self-esteem. It was also my physical health and my mental health, depression, anxiety. I was, completely out of shape, which, and so recovery for me is every aspect of life, you can keep building. I look at every area of life almost as, a staircase. It's not a perfect staircase by any means, but, I get to be the one who can build what's in front of me. And I get to be the one to strengthen, what's in front of me. So really it's been, as I mentioned earlier in this podcast, it's about getting organized. Okay, let's figure out what the problems are, all of the problems in my life are, and let's figure out how to solve those problems or come up with, some sort of solution to help me overcome those problems. And, some of those problems, such as anxiety and depression, those could be a lifelong problem for me, but let's figure out, how I can overcome those dark moments or those scary moments that are in my life. And so, recovery is an every single day thing. The good thing is I don't really worry about alcohol or drugs anymore. So that's not, the issue, but, I still have these goals and I still have these issues that I do need to take care of and continue to work on every day. And so that's what I do every single day.
What are you looking at this post or the current COVID environment, right? You look at what the Surgeon General just communicated right now, opioid related deaths, um, uh, you know, are rampant. They're being identified as a major cause of deaths all over the country. Higher number, I guess, increased number of deaths due to opioid use or misuse or addiction over I guess COVID related deaths. What do you? I mean, obviously you with your platform, do you ever get any of those questions around what should I do? Who do I turn to? How can I better manage this? And how do you navigate this space of treatment center addiction, trying to find them the right resources? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I always try to ask as many questions as possible. I mean, one, what do you think the root cause of, say if it's a relapse of what that relapse was? And, my goal is always to talk to them and relate my own story to possibly what they're going through. And as far as resources, having 7 years in recovery, I've, worked in the treatment industry, coaching, mentorship, uh, all different aspects of the recovery world. And so it's given me a lot of, resources that either I can, figure out in my head that might be a good route for them. But, most of the time I end up kind of explaining these different resources and, modalities of, recovery, these different, multiple pathways of recovery groups, and try to explain as much as I can about each one. Because, I truly believe everybody learns differently. And, I mean, whether that's our general education or I think in recovery. And so I think being able to have a multitude of options is an incredible thing because, someone might start one thing and be like, yeah, that one's not for me. Well, luckily there's all these other things that you can look into. So I think just, being knowledgeable about the resources that are out there or, resource pages, and being able to present that to those people who are struggling. I mean, that's one of my favorite things to do. I know that for a lot of people, when they reach out to me, they're like, I know, you probably get, way too many messages. So I'm not sure if you're even going to see this, but I thought I'd reach out. I'm really struggling right now. But the fact of the matter is, like, if I get, any message of somebody who's struggling, I'm going to reach back out. It's not a problem for me. It's not a burden for me. I mean, one of the most amazing things about the recovery community is it's not a burden to help someone else when they're struggling. Like it's something that actually helps my own recovery. It helps us even, if we have 40 years of recovery, I mean, it's still something that helps us is helping other people because we get to reflect back on, what was it that helped me, in my own recovery. Now I get to explain that and it reiterates that in our own minds of how to help somebody else.
It's so true. It's that whole service component. I remember, when I was trying to, put the drink down, and I would call this one, member who is now a close friend of the fellowship, and I would always, whenever he would pick up, I would always start with apologizing, and he would always say, "Listen, you're helping me as much as I'm helping you. So do not apologize." This is kind of the deal. Like this is like he had, a similar kind of mentor that kind of introduced them into the fellowship. So I totally get it. I always say, I don't care what time it is, please call me because I've been there. So
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's such a big thing that, so many of us try to get out there, but it's for some reason very hard to reach, the entire world population,
mhm.
of course. But I think, I just wish there was a way to reach every single person on earth, about whatever it is that they're going through, whether or not it has anything to do with addiction, but mental health, especially, I think people need to know that there are millions of people out there that would, jump for joy as soon as you reach out for help. It's such a good feeling. I feel like I've accomplished so much throughout that day when I get to just help somebody or direct somebody in the right direction. And that's how all of, the mental health counselors or, just people in general feel. I mean, it really is a good feeling. So when you're struggling and you reach out for help, you're really helping someone else as well. And I just wish everybody on earth knew that, because I think that is such an important, thing to get out there for sure.
What I once thought was a cowardly act, and by that I'm referring to asking for help, is actually something that today I say is probably one of the most courageous things I've ever done. Is saying, hey, I need help. Otherwise, this literally is a life and death situation.
Exactly. That reminds me, when I was a kid, I remember I was driving, or I was in the car with my parents, and we were driving and we got lost. And my mom's, talking to my dad, like, you've just got to ask this person, where we are and how to get back to, the highway. And he's like, oh no, like, his ego wouldn't let him do that. And it took us forever to figure out where the heck we were. When all it would have taken is just asking somebody. But, for me, I think, that when I was a kid and I was growing and I was learning, I was like, oh, guys they don't ask for help. That's just what we do. We don't ask for help, and I think, we see that everywhere. I mean, in movies and TVs, everything in front of us says, if you ask for help, you're weak. And the thing is, man, that's just not true. My friend that I saw get help, well, he had to ask for it, and he started living the dream, And when I asked for help, for that first time, when I said, yeah, I need help, I need to go to rehab, and I need help throughout that process. And, really throughout my early recovery, especially. And the speed in which, my life and my mindset started turning around, it was like, man, that was the greatest idea ever, is to ask for help. And so I wonder what else, I can accomplish in life, not even in regards to recovery, just by asking for help. And so I started using that same principle, for early on, it was real estate. I was like, I went to so many different, I wanted to become a real estate agent. So I went to so many different brokerages. I'm like, look, I have no clue what I'm doing, but how do I become a real estate agent and work for you guys? And eventually I came across this one, and they're like, oh yeah, they gave me all these details, and eventually I became a real estate agent for them when I lived in Ohio. And it's like, man, what else could I do? It's like, how do I build a website? How do I start a business? Every single thing in life becomes better when you ask for help, simply.
Totally agree. I just want to pivot to my next question, because I know we're running short on time here. I find it fascinating, and I learned this while I was in treatment, because everything is so structured for you, and I was so unstructured and so chaotic when I came into treatment. I'm fascinated with how people start their day, right? And I think it sets the tone for how your day evolves and how you finish off your day. Talk to me a little bit about how you approach your day. Like, when your feet hit the ground, what goes through Austin's mind?
Yeah, so I set my alarm clock either 4:30 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. depending on the day. Man, I am not a morning person. Like, everybody's like, oh, you're such a morning person. I could never do that. But the thing is, I remember years ago asking this one guy I knew on Facebook, who was like 25 years old, super successful. And I was like, man, like, tell me about your day. I asked the same exact thing. He's like, I wake up, before anybody else does. And I, spend some time drinking my coffee, relaxing, reading the news, and then I work out. And so ever since then, that's exactly what I've done. I set my alarm clock for early, I get my coffee, I read the news or any updates that I might need, and I work out. I get my blood pumping. So I think, that right there is essential to the rest of my day. It gets
Mm-hmm.
my, dopamine levels up, serotonin, all those natural chemicals that, we rely on to keep us in a good mood, have energy, and really get us through the day without crashing in any sort of way. Those are the most important steps I take is wake up early. I don't snooze my alarm. I set my phone on the ground far away, so I have to literally get out of bed, stand up, walk over there, and turn my alarm off, and I'm awake at that point. So yeah, that's what I do, and I go to work, and on my off time, either during the day when I'm working or after work, I always study random things that I'm interested in, and so for a little bit, especially when we had to go on lockdown and everything, it was like, all right, let's retouch my Spanish a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I've been really interested in SEO and digital marketing, things like that. So, I do a little bit of that on, the side, just because I know how important it is to really stretch your mind and learn new things. No matter what age you are, it just helps you in so many different ways. And it was funny because just the other day I was talking to one of my doctors, and they were reiterating the importance. They're like, do you do anything to kind of stretch your mind? Do you learn a new language or stuff like that? I'm like, actually, yeah. I
Yes.
got Duolingo, so I could relearn Spanish and be able to hopefully speak it fluently. I've got
Yeah.
a ways to go there, but SEO, learning how to code a little bit, blockchain, all this stuff that before I would have thought were the most boring things in the world. But, at the same time of doing that to stretch my mind, I'm learning a new skill set that I can use for, whatever business or, maybe getting a job or something like that. So I do that. I always take a walk around the block almost every day with my fiance, just to end the day out with our, blood pumping, and, for the most part, just hang out at night, watch TV, and go to bed early. And so I can wake up early and do the same thing the next day.
What's early? Go to bed.
We're typically laying in bed at 7:30 p.m. at night.
You have
So
got to be
we
kidding
watch
me.
some TV. So it's not, I'm not
Eh,
going to sleep at that time, but I typically fall asleep around 9:30 at
okay.
night.
Okay. Interesting. 7:30. That's early, Austin.
Yeah,
Smart man.
yeah, but
It works.
we each work out, early in the morning. We have our long walk, around the block a few times at night. We both work very hard during the day, and so it's like, all right, it's time to relax, go to bed, or lay in bed at 7:30, watch
Mm-hmm.
some TV, just dumb down our minds a little bit, and then
Mm-hmm.
get a good night's sleep.
Austin, I want to make sure that the listeners, subscribers have an opportunity to, hear more about you, your walk, your platform. Can you kind of share where you're at with Sober Evolution, what you want to do with it, where they can find you?
Yeah, of course. So, it's evolved over the years, little play on words there. But, right now, mostly on Instagram. So it's at Sober Evolution. I just post a lot. And lately I've been trying to recreate my website. So I used to have, a website that, was getting tons of, traffic and tons of people reaching out to me through that. I kind of, scaled it back a little bit when I started working in the logistics industry. It kind of took me away from that a little bit. But now, going back more into the treatment industry and things like that, so I'm able to focus a lot more on Sober Evolution and helping people through the website. So redesigning the website right now. It'll be soberevolution.net. And so, yeah, early stages with that. But if you want to hang out online and reach me, just come on to my social media platforms, either on Facebook or Instagram, and be more than happy to talk to you.
Excellent. Austin, a sincere thank you for your time. I often say it's one of the most finite of resources. I'm grateful that you gave me 40 minutes of yours. I look forward to having you on the show again. Our continued collaboration as two individuals in recovery that really, we're in the people business. I say that all the time. It's just a matter of how do we continue building each other up. And so with that, I wanted to say thank you very much for your time, your consideration, and everything you shared with us today.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to see where your podcast goes. And I can't wait to tune into all your future episodes. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Austin.